I became fascinated with them while driving past a pair of huge Percheron horses, medieval war horses that live in a pasture nearby. And I would see them early in the morning with the sun rising behind them. Two giant horses, their shoulders a yard across, their saddles a yard across. They struck me as being like architecture. Their huge, massive four-poster structure appealed to me because at the time I was painting barns. I was completely interested in structures with four posts and a peaked roof. And oddly, that's the way the horses struck me. And then the poetry of the way the light rose behind them in the morning, shadows cast on the pasture. But for several years I had other work to do, and I thought of other things and felt that I didn't know enough to begin painting horses. I didn't know them enough, and that I had to learn a great deal to know them. And several years later, a friend was walking her horse past my studio window. And I suddenly saw the horse's shape framed within the window, and it occurred to me that I needed very badly to know how big a horse really is. And I asked her to bring him into the studio, which she did, because I was not interested at all in painting something smaller than life-size. If it was a horse, it had to be life-size, following on the same principle that Ruskin mentions when saying, "What could be more contemptible than a 30-foot pyramid?" Same thing. Horse had to be life-size. And so I took his measure, and that was 3 years ago. And I began suddenly to paint horses again after studying their anatomy, doing many studies, trying to understand how they're really made, what makes them tick. Suddenly one day, I had a sense about what happens when a horse lifts its hoof, how the impulse raises the tension in the shoulder, in the leg, and finally the weight of the hoof hanging from the wrist of the horse. And suddenly it became possible to imagine the horses in motion, to imagine this hoof thrust forward, thrown out, and then suddenly I was painting them galloping. And that's where this series of work comes from. These paintings are called wild horses. These horses are galloping across the rectangles. They're not in the pictures, they're on their way through the rectangle of space. They're moving fast. There are no saddles, no bridles. These horses aren't being held back, they're not being ridden, driven, trained. They're just running. These paintings are about the power of motion, the energy and gesture of motion. The horses create gesture in their career through the canvas. They're not thoroughbreds, they're not warm bloods, they're not a breed of horse. Maybe they're just wild horses like Mustangs. They're not finely bred to represent an aesthetic tradition. They are survivors. They're horses full of energy and the strength to move and to exist. I love them for the qualities that they bear: strength, vitality, power, a kind of quietude and speed at the same time, sort of sensual strength. The two share their energy and their ability to run. The men don't even have faces with features. The horses have eyes that look out. The horses appear to be the more sentient, the more communicative of the two. The legs of the horses, especially the forelegs, are churning. They're windmilling forward the way they do when horses gallop. They don't place their feet in a finely orchestrated way. There's a hurtling forward. This painting is unfinished. I've painted the head and the neck 25 times, 35 times. I don't even know how many times. When I began the painting, it went swiftly, and the energy of this horse that's practically in midair with 3 of its forelegs up in the air, was so swift and found its way onto the canvas in no time. And the head was wrong. And then the head was wrong again, and again, and again, and again. So this painting isn't finished, and it's going to require a successful process of gesture to get that head right. But I'll keep working on it. It isn't about horses, it's about motion. And I haven't begun to paint horses.